Hey there, viewers. Did you know that the Disney Corporation filed a motion in Congress to declare Disney World and Disneyland as no-fly zones? Ever wonder where else planes were forbidden from flying? Well, we're back with another video on airline secrets, flying tips, and travel hacks. Today, we're looking at why planes never fly over Disneyland and 9 other weird no-fly zones. Subscribe to Inforama if you haven't already, and let's get started. Number 10. Disneyland and Disneyworld. Areas that attract massive traffic are usually given temporary no-fly zone status to avoid any complications in case a plane must make an impromptu landing. For example, every year, the Super Bowl is declared as a no-fly zone. In 2003, Florida's Walt Disney World and California's Disneyland were given access by Congress to declare their airspace off-limits. The idea was that air vibrations from heavy aircrafts began threatening the animals at the animal kingdom, plus the obvious issue with safety given the massive number of tourists flocking the world's happiest place every year. However, there was another reason, a more self-serving one. Back in the 80s, planes would drop down flyers and advertisements when passing through Disneyland. Some political, some religious, and some from their leading competitors, namely SeaWorld. The easiest, but also the costliest way out was to declare Disneyland a no-fly zone. Number 9. The South Pole. Booking a direct flight from Buenos Aires to Perth might be pretty challenging. Not necessarily because flights from Argentina to Australia are barred, but because airlines are to avoid flying over the South Pole, that is, Antarctica. But why the South Pole specifically and not the North Pole? Airplanes that fly to the South Pole aren't necessarily commercial flights. They're smaller aircrafts taking a passenger or two to the cold mountainous terrains for scientific purposes. If a flight carrying hundreds of passengers were to make a detour in the South Pole, they'd find themselves pretty isolated with no control towers, fuel centers, not even an airport. Another reason why flights don't go over the South Pole is because the magnetic resonance in the area messes with the flight's navigation system. If you know anything about planes, it's that losing signals with a control tower could be a possible death sentence. Lastly, the cold temperatures make flights unbearable. There's little to no visibility, not something you'd want when you're in the middle of snowy peaks. Plus, passengers would have to lather up. Now, why do flights go over the North Pole if they can't go over the South Pole? It's not that easy either. Airplanes that fly over Santa's base are well prepped in advance and under strict regulations. Your flight from Buenos Aires to Perth will definitely be a connecting flight. Number 8. Area 51. If you were part of the crowd planning on storming Area 51 back in 2019, you might have known there weren't any flights going to that location. If you wanted to take a look inside one of the United States' most guarded locations, you'd probably have to go by foot. Is Area 51 off limits for everyone? Not necessarily, although there are a list of specifications that have to be met. First of all, the only planes allowed to travel to Area 51 must take off from Las Vegas's McCarran International Airport. The planes themselves must use the call sign Janet to get clearance to enter the airspace. Oh, and you need to be a high-ranking official in the military to get there. Number 7. The Pacific Ocean. Planning on flying over the largest ocean in the world? You might have to keep those plans on the back burner for now because trans-Pacific flights are pretty rare. So why don't planes fly over the Pacific Ocean? Because it isn't practical to do so. The largest ocean, the Pacific, takes up more space on the globe than any country, and owing to the Earth's spherical shape, it pretty much runs east to west over the globe. Let's say you are flying from North America to Asia. Flying from east to west over the Pacific would take you days, but flying from north to south would take you hours. Airlines are pretty particular when it comes to saving time and costs. Flying over the Pacific wouldn't be in line with either of them. Number 6. The Holy City of Mecca. The Islamic holy city, the city of Mecca, is another no-fly zone. The Saudi government has given strict instructions for the city to remain free of commercial flights and only allows a few select private flights to the city. Why? Several reasons, actually. First of all, there is no airport in Mecca. The closest city, Jeddah, has one of Saudi Arabia's largest airports, and it's located no more than 90 kilometers from the city. Another reason would be the city's strong magnetic field. This field disrupts a plane's navigation system, and true north is disrupted. Pilots use true north to figure out landing sites. It would be pretty difficult to do if your navigation system is messed up. Lastly, the city is one of the world's most popular tourist destinations, and there's frankly no space in the city to construct an airport amidst the holy sites, hotels, and other buildings. An impromptu landing for a Boeing 747 would be close to impossible. Number 5. Tibet. Home to the Himalayan mountain range, you'd think more passengers would want to fly over one of the world's greatest marvels. Well, unfortunately for them, airlines aren't sympathetic to their sightseeing choices. Why? Because for a plane to fly over Tibet would be the equivalent of them signing off on impending doom. Alright, maybe that sounded a little more ominous than it should have, but aircrafts are told to avoid regions with severely high altitudes. Basically, at higher altitudes, the cabin pressure drops and the pilot is instructed to lower the aircraft to an altitude that would restore the cabin pressure to an optimal level. However, lowering the plane in mountainous terrains would make it difficult to navigate the plane. It's a lose-lose situation here. Another pretty straightforward reason why planes don't fly over Tibet is because the area makes for an unforgiving landing site. Yes, you'd have to travel by road to see the mountaintops in Tibet. Number 4. George and Martha's home. I cannot tell a lie. Located in Mount Vernon, Virginia, a wooden house built in the late 1700s still stands tall. This house belonged to the first president of the United States, George Washington, and his wife, Martha Washington. Although granted, the house has seen some wear and tear over the years, centuries at this point. The U.S. government has declared George and Martha's house as a National Historic Landmark, and while they can't keep termites from invading it every now and then, they're making sure of the fact that air vibrations don't shake the foundation any more than it already might have. The site is actually one of the few sites in the U.S. that is a non-military no-fly zone. Tourists can visit Mount Vernon just not by airplane. Number 3. Pantex Nuclear Assembly Plant. Yep, it's exactly what you think it is. Located a little northeast of Amarillo, Texas, we have the Pantex Nuclear Assembly Plant. This plant is a site for the production of nuclear weapons, for dismantling missiles and keeping tabs on existing weapons of war. For the most part, we know what's going on at Pantex, but you can't expect a nuclear plant to give away all of its secrets, now can you? On the plus side, Pantex hasn't developed a nuclear weapon since 1991. Fingers crossed it stays that way. Number 2. Camp David. Camp David might sound like the place you'd want to go over the summer, but you'd actually be surprised to know that the friendly-seeming site is off bounds for most people, and for most aircrafts. During his tenure, President Franklin D. Roosevelt established the Naval Support Facility of Thurmont, located in Thurmont, Maryland. The site was supposed to be a specifically designated site for U.S. presidents to conduct important meetings in complete secrecy. It's also where a lot of international presidents conduct meetings and sign important documents. Then, in the 1950s, President Dwight Eisenhower renamed the site after his grandson. The site remains one of the U.S.'s most well-guarded sites, which might explain why the government insists that no planes fly over it. Number 1. Kennedy Space Center. Unless you'd want your pilot to count down and say liftoff, you would avoid the Kennedy Space Center. The site is a popular tourist attraction with hundreds of visitors every single day. You wouldn't expect an impromptu landing of a heavy aircraft in the middle of some kids gazing at the rockets. The site is also a no-fly zone because NASA conducts air tests of its own in the area. Plus, the U.S. Air Force is always roaming about. Unless you want there to be a traffic stop in the sky, you best avoid the Kennedy Space Center. Alright, comment down below if you know of any other no-fly zones. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Inforama, and check out some of our other videos. We'll see you in the next one.